and Human Services Secretary Tom Price is vowing to repay American taxpayers nearly $52,000 for flying on charter flights for government business.
But a new report from Politico suggests Price may owe taxpayers more than $1 million. Now he's fighting for his job as trips by 3 other cabinet secretaries are also drawing scrutiny. We want to bring in Politico's national political reporter, Gabe Debenedetti, to talk a little bit about this. So, Gabe, Tom Price is now facing mounting criticism over these latest reports. But this also comes after he and Congress failed to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act. That's part of the reason why he got this position, is because the thinking was he had good relationships in Congress and he could close this deal. So are his days numbered in Washington?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. We don't know exactly what the administration is thinking in terms of Price's future here, but you're exactly right. Price is a former congressman who was famous for talking about the importance of responsible spending and who was really known for railing against the Affordable Care Act. Well, 8 months in, they haven't repealed the Affordable Care Act, and he's been caught not exactly spending responsibly. So it doesn't look good for him. President Trump has said he's sort of reviewing the situation. We haven't yet gotten any indication that he's going to fire Price or anything along those lines. But what is clear is that this is really a headache that the administration didn't need to be dealing with right now. It's trying to get other things passed, but it keeps having to answer for its health secretary.
Gabe, explain to our viewers why these revelations about private travel surrounding President Trump's cabinet are so alarming and perhaps some might say hypocritical, especially from Tom Price, considering he was flying on taxpayer dollars as he pushed for major cuts to disease prevention programs, scientific, medical research, and I recall there was even a soundbite of his from 2009 where he lambasted other lawmakers for doing the same thing.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You hit the nail on the head. Price, but also some of these other cabinet members, were former lawmakers for the most part who regularly talk about the importance of cutting down on government spending, making sure they often talk about wastefulness in government spending. People have found all sorts of examples of statements and tweets from Price himself talking about how Democrats spend too much and it's time for Republicans to roll that back. And obviously, you know, the important context here is that it's not normal for cabinet secretaries to take private travel all around the country. So there seems to be a clear stench of hypocrisy that's going on. And as you noted, this is at the same time that these exact cabinet secretaries are themselves trying to cut down the budgets of their agencies. So this just doesn't look good for them personally. What's not clear exactly is what kind of fallout there will be. Politically, it's kind of a headache for the White House and for Republicans in Washington, but Democrats don't actually have that much power right now to investigate this. So they're going to make a lot of noise, and they're going to make clear that they're not happy with the current state of affairs, but we'll see how this actually develops.
So I'm sure instead of talking about spending taxpayers' money frivolously, the president would rather us talk about his tax plan. Even on the campaign trail, he talked about whatever tax plan that he pushes will be good for the middle class. That's what he said over and over again when he unveiled it. But what do we know really about what it will do for the middle class? The details are kind of skimpy.
Yeah, that's definitely one way to put it. We don't yet know a lot of the details about what the actual impact will be on the middle class itself. A lot of Democrats and economists on the left are very skeptical that this is going to ultimately help them. They basically see this as an excuse for cutting taxes for the wealthiest Americans and then maybe seeing some other repercussions down the line. What is clear is that this might make life a little bit more difficult for people who are either upper middle class or middle class without necessarily being called wealthy. What we don't know yet is what it's going to look like for everyday Americans who, you know, would consider themselves middle class, the people that Trump was campaigning to.
And Gabe, as you know, Senator Lindsey Graham said passing tax reform is crucial for the Republican Party, and the 2018 midterms could depend on it. And you wrote an article out today on those upcoming elections and the divisions in the Democratic and the Republican Party. We've already seen this play out in Alabama, where Steve Bannon backed Roy Moore. He was the establishment. Roy Moore was the candidate that Steve Bannon backed, and it was in fact Luther Strange that was the sort of establishment candidate. Are we going to see more of these Bannon-style candidates spring up from the Republican Party? And is he really a kingmaker, or is it more of a perception?
It's certainly the perception. It's unclear yet how successful he's going to be. Roy Moore was already an extremely powerful figure in Alabama before Steve Bannon decided to make him his cause. But what Bannon does have is a lot of ties to big money, and so this is what is making Republicans particularly nervous, because Bannon is essentially going around talking to far-right candidates in a lot of different seats who would be challenging sitting Republican senators and threatening to pour a lot of money into those races. Now, the reason that makes Republicans unhappy and a little bit nervous is that they already have the majority. They should be on offense in 2018 because of the way that the Senate map in particular is shaped. But Democrats seem to be doing all right. They don't have any primary challenges of their own. And the Republican Party is sort of engaging in this big civil war. So when someone like Lindsey Graham says they need to be able to pass tax reform, basically what he's saying is we need to be able to show the American people legislative accomplishments. Now, what Bannon is doing and what some other people on the far right are doing is essentially distracting these senators who are now more nervous about protecting their right flank than actually about passing something in Congress.
So what about the Democrats, though? They may not be exactly engaging in a civil war to the same degree, I guess, as the Republican Party, but there are progressives, they are centrists. Are they moving together? Are they finding common ground?
They're certainly trying to find common ground. One of the things that certainly united them over the last few months is a displeasure, shall we say, for everything coming out of the White House and that Republicans are doing, and that's made their lives a little bit easier. There's certainly massive ideological divides within the party and even some tactical divides, but what we haven't seen is something like we've seen on the Republican side. There's no sitting Democratic senator who's currently facing a serious challenge from the left, and that's just not something that anyone expected. A lot of people were very nervous that after the 2016 election, there would be a lot of folks inspired by Bernie Sanders going after Democratic senators. But that hasn't really happened so far.
Interesting. Gabe Debenedetti, as always, my friend, thank you very much.
Thank you.